boat featured in the pre-show slideshow. We have 6 members of Siska completed a wonderful 16-day kayak camping trip from Port Hardy to Coal Harbour this past summer, and we're going to learn what they did with their pre-trip planning, their decision-making before and during the trip. That's often the more interesting part, and learning about some of the highlights and challenges from each member of the group. So, on to our main event.
Short stick with getting to do the longer introduction. Anyway, everybody knows already because I've been up here 3 times. I'm Jenny Sutton, and the format for tonight is I'm going to do a short 10-minute intro about, just broad strokes about the trip, and then we're each going to have 8-10 minutes to talk about aspects of the trip that were of interest to us or things we learned, whatever. It was sort of open book, except we made sure we didn't duplicate things to have them fall asleep on us. Anyway, now I have to see if I can work this thing. So, as Mike said, it was a 16-day trip. It wasn't a long trip as far as the paddle distance was. So, who were...
We turned some lights down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jenny, will you stand by the podium so that we can see?
No,
Oh,
that's
yeah, perfect.
Is that okay? Is that okay, Rob?
All right.
Another one?
It'd be better if you had some more of these off.
Okay, the back one?
Yeah.
I think maybe they're at the back.
That's better.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was boats packed up. We're just all ready to go, and put the timer on and did the shot. So we've got oh, I need this one. There's too much technology here. So Mike Relson, everybody knows Mike. He's here. He was our most skilled, most experienced. The most skilled paddler joined us. That's myself. Deb Leach, the cook extraordinaire. John Binkley was a philosopher. Jean from Nanaimo, and we met Jean when we did one of the surf clinics with Eve and Patty over in Long Beach, and asked her to join us. And then Alan, and I have to acknowledge, Alan did all the photo putting together, anything we wanted, last minute, changed the order. Amazing. I think it's amazing because I don't do that kind of stuff. Anyway, so when we got up to Port Hardy, we really recommend this place, Norco Trail Hostel. It was $25 a night, might have been a few dollars tax. It was a 5-minute walk from the launch site, the other side of Carrot Park, which is over this way. And we could park 3 cars there for free for 16 days. Pretty amazing.
Nice.
And she bent over backwards with showers and rooms and everything, so it was very good. And this is our route. And I'll talk a little bit more in my personal bit, what happened along the way. Port Hardy, first day to Nolan Point, just outside of God's Pocket. I'll tell you now. We planned to go around north side of Naiji, camp at Vansittart, and then on to Cape Sudal. And I'll tell you why we changed later to doing this route on the south side of Naiji. So we paddled from day 2. We and if everybody that knows me knows that I hate moving camp 2 days in a row because it's such a waste of time packing and unpacking, but we wanted to get somewhere. So we paddled along here. We had the time in here. The south shore of Naiji was more interesting than we thought, with arches and caves and rock cliffs that were higher than Valdez cliffs. So we sort of got sidetracked there, crossed over to Shardy Bay, and then along past Jector Point. I've got some slides later on to show you. And then in here we had to cross Newiddy Bar, and as long as you do it at slack and the wind's not blowing a gale, which it wasn't, we had a non-event there. The only thing is, because we dawdled here, we ended up paddling into some flood, and the flood comes in here, and we were going that way. So it was a slog, and there was a rock before Cape Sudal, and we named it Receding Rock. It seemed to take us forever to get to Cape Sudal. It's as beautiful as they say, and we spent 2 nights there, And the fog was in the morning, and then in the after, so we didn't paddle in the morning. And but we did do a paddle back. There was a fresh water at Nowitty River, so we had a swim and washed a few clothes, got some more water. And Cape Soodle is the most northern cape on Vancouver Island. So it's kind of neat to walk around there and think about that. And we were able to see the visibility all the way up to the coast here. And Hackeye. That was amazing. So then we moved on, and we started seeing whales and through here, we saw humpbacks. And when we came into Nissenbite, we had a whale experience that I'll explain a bit later, which is one of the highlights for me. And then on to, the wind was blowing from the southeast. Am I making anybody feel off color with my things in here? And if the wind had been blowing from the northwest, it's a really great place because you can just scoot around the corner, and Guy's Bay has got just as nice a beach and camping as Experiment Bite where we stay. So whichever side you stay on, you're basically out of the wind, as long as you know what the wind direction is. We end up having to spend extra days there because of the wind forecast. And we had lots of information from Eve and Patty, and one of the things we knew is that the weather forecast on the VHF radio came from Prince Rupert, so they didn't go down to Cape Scott. So you had to call up to the lighthouse keepers, and they gave you the weather report. And so the day we were going to go, there was southeast winds that direction. Around 15, there was white caps and stuff, and the group consensus was, we don't want to slog it out with loaded boats for 13 nautical miles to San Josef Bay into a headwind. So we stayed another night, and the forecast was then get out of Dodge because the wind was swinging to the northwest, and we didn't want to get caught in big following seas. So then we skedaddled around. Lots of sea lions there greeting us and doing fake charges. On down past, we stopped at Laurie Bay for a little bit, and then into San Josef Bay, camped, I think it was called Second Beach. Anyway, another freshwater stop, and then extra day there, but what happened here was we were going to stay 3 nights because there's so much to do and see. And the weather forecast was, we had a window where the wind was maxing at 15, and after that it was going to be 20, 25. So we skedaddled, and this trip here was 22 nautical miles, and we might not have been able to stop. So if you think of bio breaks, food, hydration, a lot to think about. But we were able to stop at Raft Cove and have a short break, and then it was that was 8 miles, and then it was a long slog. And this weather front was coming down behind. You could see the black front coming behind us, and we sort of knew it was going to hit us. We were like running away from it. And sure enough, about half an hour from Quatsino Sound, it started. The wind picked up. The rain started, and we skedaddled around the corner into Kane's Beach, and it was a bit drizzly, but we were out of the wind. Land is wonderful for stopping. And so we spent a couple of nights there. Did a trip into Winter Harbor. And for some people, they thought that was the end of the trip because we'd done them outside, and for the rest of us, it was like we've just started to explore. Okay. This trip was about smelling the kelp, you know, having a couple of days stop at places. We then camped at Spencer Cove, which is a forestry campsite, and we all sort of thought, oh, there's going to be people and noise, but it ended up being very nice, except for the bugs in the morning. And very buggy in Quatsino Sound, very buggy. And we did a trip across the Mahato River, and some of the group were talking about that. That was a fabulous day. Again, fresh water, swimming, you know. So we had 3 major swim holes where we could get drinking water, you know, filtered, which we filtered. Drake Island was our last stop, and we spent 2 nights there. And then we had the time to go with the flood, that direction, through Quatsino Narrows, because it's very narrow and the current really runs there. And then we tried to go up Marble River because Jenny wanted to get up to the canyon. But the tide was rising, but we were getting out of time. But there's a really nice day trip from Coal Harbor on a rising tide to go right up Marble River to Marble Canyon, and then back out on the ebb. So that's something you can do. Just drive to Coal Harbor. It's really easy. And then my friend Jim, who lives in Port Hardy from my old Savalas days, he came, it's a 15, 20-minute car ride on paved road to Port Hardy, and he drove us to get our cars. So we cut it short by 1 day, the whole trip. We did 8 days of moving, and 7-day paddles, plus all the trail hiking and stuff. And the group consensus was you didn't have to do everything, but guess what? We all did everything. Okay. So I think most of us lost weight, even though we ate a lot. Yes, so that's, so I'm gonna whip through the rest of these. So that was our weather day 1 out of Port Hardy. We just lucked in on, we had 3 days with some rain. Unfortunately, the rain timing was bad when we were packing up. But other than that, you know, I'm learning to like weather camping, I think. And that's where you cross, this is Galeda's Channel, and over to God's Pocket. That was our first night. Just beautiful. And now I've never seen this, but this is what Alan Campbell does. Now, actually, you can see that, Alan, but we were going to. I've got copies of it back there. He has on there the day, the date, the currents, all day, maximum, and then up here it's the date, Port Hardy, Shushardy, you know. And it was just a general idea, but it gave us the current times for Cape Scott when we had to go around. Okay, so, and to do Nwitty Bar. It's kind of nice to have it all in one thing, and he spent a lot of time doing that. Okay, so. That's on the way to Cape Sudal, that's Jeffrey Point, and that's the most amazing beach. It's like smooth, like round gravel, but it's very steep. If you went to even Patty's talk, she was holding the kayaks up and on the beach, like trying to hold them. If you went to her top and top. And that's coming into Cape Sudal, just beautiful beach. There was one couple camped there, so we just camped down here, and that's where you walk out. You can get, there's a trail you can find, and then you're right out to the open there. Okay. It's well over 2 days there. So that I just had Alan do this because this shows that we had water. Pretty nice spacing. You couldn't have asked for it. Because it was a dry summer, we knew the small creeks were going to be dry. We checked some of them, and they were. Okay. Wonderful. So that's at Nwitty. That's our first watering hole. It was a bit chilly, but I smiled for the show. I don't know why, but there was other pictures of other people. And then there was a creek just up here where 3 of the people collected some water. I mean, not early in the trip. This is at Cape Scott, and there's, Alan had brought this mega, it's called the Taj Mahal tarp, and it's huge. And he could tie a top tarp, I'll tell you. And so it was great because we could all be under it with lots of room, cooking, everything, you know, so. And there we are discussing, you know, every day we had a little huddle, okay, what we're going to do next. And that's John's there, and that's his setup over there. And then that's at the lighthouse. That's how easy it is to get water. You turn on a tap, potable water. We went up twice because we stayed an extra day. And I guess I put that back in there. And this is Lowry Bay. If I go back one. Okay, so that beautiful bay is on the way down here, I'm pretty sure. Yes. And you know, you could camp there easily. There's a funny little cabin that's pretty run down, and there's one of those plastic round little trophy things. What is it called? It was pretty. You know, the bushes were better. But you can see it's a beautiful beach, just beautiful. That's, everybody knows that, that's San Jose, that's the stacks at San Joseph Bay. You can get in there by road and launch at the river and paddle it, just you gotta be careful at the river mouth. And when we came around, just go back. Remember I said it started raining down here? And we already had packed up wet in the morning there. It rained as we were packing up. So we had wet tent, wet tarps, and we got around here, it was still raining. And Jenny wasn't a happy chappy, but the rest of the crew, thank heavens, were cheerful. And was that where I got, what was the name?
No.
Anyway, the next day, sunshine, Jenny's happy, and that's Jenny's laundry. That's how wet things were. I mean, tension, just everything. But there's nothing like having sunshine the day after that to have you feel wonderful. Now, this was a highlight at Spencer Cove. Remember I said, now, I'm supposed to have, if I click it again. Now, we were packing up to leave. This guy we saw the day before across this little estuary, right where our campsite was, he wasn't interested in us. Okay, I won't show the whole thing, but you'd like to see the whole thing? Okay.
He's just walking away.
Okay, so he wasn't interested in us. Now, this was at Drake. This was, Drake Island was our last stop in just before we went through the Narrows, and Jean or somebody called this Jenny's Point. That's my fancy chair. And, last campsite, 2 nights, it was a time to think about the trip, reflect on what had happened, think about your kayak buddies, how well did you behave or not behave. Grumpy Pants, that was my name.
We had
I get
noticed.
grumpy when I heard that.
I'm shocked.
This is called Pamphlet Cove, and there's actually a nice little high water paddle around there. John and I had it was spiritual, it was magical. We just paddled, there was no wind, there was not a sound, and then we could hear the rain. And it was just the forest, and it was just magic. So, we were just so lucky. And then, this is a shot I took. We had to tie, that's Quatsino Narrows, and we lucked it. Well, it was changing from an ebb, and we had quite a low, and so we had intertidal, we had bat stars, we had leather stars, we had anemones. It was fantastic. Have you given me the red?
Yeah, I did.
Edges? I did see it. Anyway. How much time have I got there? Okay, this is my personal stuff. So this trip is, I didn't think I had the skill set for it like a few years ago, and and it was like scary. Go around Cape Scott and down that exposed coast, but my skill level was going up. And one day after cycling, having coffee, and I just sort of said, one day, and Alan said, well, it's on my list, let's do it. And then Deb said, well, I want to come too. So then it was, pick some dates, what do we want to do, and then, we really had to improve our surf landing and launching, so we went off and did some courses with Even Patio at Long Beach, and some of us did rough water rescues in Enterprise Channel deliberately in like 20 knots of wind, and so we felt more, not cocky, but more confident, and so we wanted people with sort of that kind of skill level, or committed to get to that skill level for the trip. And so we ended up, Jean, we met on one of the surf clinics, so that was a great find for us. And John had been paddling with Alan, and he's a keener, like he's really keen. And then Michael, of course, Michael's level 4 and level 2 instructor, it's like that was it's whether he could get the time off work. And so there we go. So we had a meeting early on because that's, if you're doing a major trip, you want to find out what people's expectations and goals. And like how long the trip's going to be, what's the behavior going to be on the water, how far apart, like just that, you don't want to go in and do surge channels when you're going to lower the boat at the beginning of a trip. How often to move camp, virtually, Alan was used to this expedition type of paddling from the year before, and it's like, I want 2 nights at campsites and paddle bigger distances to get there. And that worked really well. Meals, communication on or off the grid. I've never really thought about that before because Lynn used to carry a spot, but Alan talked about his enrich. And so do you want to be in communication with the outside world, or like the good old days where I'll call you when I get in? And it's something to think about, if you don't hear from me, everything's fine. That's the way we used to travel. Meals, do we want to do group or individual? We went for group, which meant then you wanted bigger pots, bigger fry pan. So the bigger boats got to carry that stuff. And so number of stoves, fuel, all that kind of thing. Fuel, we got fuel that can cross between stoves. It's all that nitty gritty stuff. First aid kits and repair kits, you don't need 6. So we worked out who was taking that. Tarps, the mega tarp was just wonderful, and then we knew what we had for tarps. Water, they say 3 liters a day. I don't personally use 3 liters, but you got to think if you rehydrating food all the time for 16 days, you need more water than you might think. And where would we get water? And filtrate, you know, like you don't need to carry 6 sets of filtering, but you want 2 or 3 in case something goes sideways with one of them. And bear care, like, you know, there's bear barrels back there to have a look at that 3 of the group took. Jean wanted to practice slinging her bags up, and I had my last week of food way up the bow of mine, you know, right at the pointy end. I didn't want to pull that out. And so they were okay with me having sealed hatches at night. Okay, so, but you want to talk about that and you know, before you go. Onward. Lots of intertidal, that's the giant green anemones. You know, for me, just special, this was Cape Sudal where we had to go over a headland, and then that's Jean and Alan down the bottom. So this was a magical experience for me, and I think Jean and Michael and I, and I think it was Miss and Bite, and before, on the way from Cape Sudal to Cape Scott, and Alan and John and Alan, John and me, Deb had gone ahead because Alan wanted to check the creek up, and we were dawdling a bit, and suddenly this humpback was between the 3 of us, Mike and Jean and I. And I don't know how long it was there for. It felt like a long time. And he was like flippering up like that and rolling, and and that's Jean right there. And you know, we felt perfectly safe. Now that I know more about humpbacks, maybe I wouldn't have felt so safe. Anyway, and so then, so those 2 headed off, and you know, Jenny's always lagging behind because one more look and one more picture. And all of a sudden there was my kayak's here, and there's a big bubble happens about a kayak length away here. And I better get moving here. So I put my paddle in the water, and this thing did that, right, just like 2 kayak lengths behind. I wasn't afraid, just this most wonderful experience. I was on a high for a couple of days. So that was that. All the trailheads along that North Coast Trail, and we did a couple of really neat walks, they're well marked. I told you I was going to put in some bad weather shots. So this is, just before I'll go ahead, that's Quatsino Lighthouse, and you can see the waves breaking on the shore there. And that's sort of looking, the lighthouse is on this island, and that's the gap, and we decided it was too rough to go through there. So we went around, and that was the shot there. And then we tucked in, and it was calm. So this is the next day. We saw quite a lot of these, and we get them down here, but not as big as up there. These are the egg yolk or fried egg jellies. Is that right, Mike? Yeah. Huge. I don't know what all this paraphernalia is downstairs. These went on for like 6-8 feet. I wouldn't want to tangle with one. Monkey flower. Yeah, I'm into nature. You know, these are up at the lighthouse. On Drake Island, not only was there an old homestead on the south side, yeah, you could camp there, big beach and everything, so we explored there. There's lots of ruins and stuff. But near the campsite, and there was a little trail to it, we actually found the foundations of what had been an old hotel. And these foxgloves, I think, were actually, you know, they weren't like wild, they were actually put there by the hotel. And that north, I told you, the north shore of Quatsino Sound, lots of caves, and there were some arches, and one particular arch was memorable. Leather stars. Yeah, those are leather stars. Now, these are the cliffs on the way, we've gone through the Narrows, and this is the way into Cole Harbor. So I was about over half a mile behind because I wanted to get these perspective shots. You know, I mean, look how tiny they are. These are bigger than the Valdez Cliffs. Pretty spectacular. We had good light that day. It wasn't raining by then. And this is, I think, my final shot. And that was just an arch, and then just around the corner is Cole Harbor. So for me, Got the yellow card, okay. So I get one more minute there. So I'm really fortunate to have kayak buddies who are so patient with me and supportive and knowledgeable. Alan and Michael, tying top tarps, and Michael, the top line hitch. I will love you forever for that. And Deb, she's a very experienced camper and so organized in the kitchen and with the I learn all sorts of twiddly bits from her. And Jean, our fish provider, she persisted even though none of us could help her. And John, our thinker and philosopher. So I'm very fortunate to have this trip with my buddies. And it's over to, do you need both? No, I'm good. You ready?
I thought I'd talk a little bit about group dynamics, because it can make or break your experience. Before last July, the 6 of us had not all paddled together. My favorite kayak guide once told me that after 5 days, people start to get on your nerves. And we'd be out for 16, so I had to be prepared. To get us thinking of, like a group, Alan put together a website. How many people saw the website? And followed us on Facebook? Good, great, okay. So I think that was good, and as Jenny said, the pre-trip meeting where all 6 of us got together because Jean came down from Coombs really helped us to set out our expectations. We certainly had our differences. We had early risers, night owls, introverts, extroverts, rain phobic. John was cooking for himself, the rest of us cooked together. Big picture thinkers, details person, you can sort of picture who these are, the philosopher, the practice, the beachcomber, the beach cleaner, the bare minimalist, and the gear maximalist. And the most amazing thing was nobody woke up grumpy, not even on that morning where we had a 4 a.m. wake-up call because we had to break camp to go south. And as soon as I took my tarp down, it just downpoured in the dark. It was just, but we were pretty good. And we had no designated leader, as Jenny said. On the water, we made our decisions by consensus. And if one person wasn't comfortable, we said, okay, we'll have to go on to plan B. But we did have to make sure that we all huddled together so that nobody was left out of a conversation about what's next. So that was important. Before the trip, Alan had us get together and say, what do I bring? Well, I'm not a level 4 paddler, but I have been kayak camping since 1992. So one day I took a risk because I thought, let's check in and see how we're doing, because we don't want people to get like upset and have things fester. So I'd done some workshops and done a idea where you talk about what's in your head, what's in your heart, and what's in your hands. It's to let other people know as you go around the circle, what did you learn today? How are you feeling? Is there anything you'd do differently? And it worked. It was pretty neat. And I think it helped take the temperature of the group. And a couple of nights later, Jean went around the group and said, what are 3 things that you like or make you happy? And then another night, Michael went, what are your signature dishes? He wanted to pick our brains about recipes. So I think it just got us thinking like a group and sort of doing a little bit of bonding, which having meals together really does. And of course, the key is having the tarp on the wet coast. Although John cooked alone, he ate together, and I think that was good for group cohesion. And remember to celebrate if you have a chance. Both Jean and John had birthdays on the trip. Who remembered? So we dug into our hatches and brought out an old map that we could write on the back of, and got some chocolate for Jean, and a neckerchief for John, and a spoon. And the neckerchief sort of has become the keeper's signature. That was sort of fun. Alan paddles with a couple of groups called the Paddling Fanatics and the Catfish Guys, and I was going, I think we need a name. And so I said, what about Scotties? And I'm like, boo, nobody wanted to be Scotties. So Michael came up with the perfect name because we'd be rounding 5 capes. So we became known as the Capers. So that's how that name came about. Let's see. Oh yes, keeping in touch. I thought Alan had the in-reach communicator, and he said, okay, I'm going to train everybody to be able to communicate our day's experience in 140 characters. And that's quite a challenge. So that's what many of you were following. And this is probably not what you were following, because my hieroglyphics and my short term, what you can put into the day that Jenny described when we went back to Nwiti with the eagle soaring overhead and the salmon swimming below us. It was pretty hard to stick it into a short message. As Jenny mentioned, when we were on days off, we didn't all have to do everything, but for the most part, it seemed like important so that people had time to chill and just take some time out or some time to explore. So going slow, having times, like Jenny said, to smell the kelp was a good thing. Oh yeah, I remember sometimes people were grumbling, thinking, oh, low tide, oh, I hate dragging the boats at low tide. And then we'd be rewarded with the wonderful low tide experience of the bat stars and the seaweed and the anemone. So I think people were pretty good at switching those frowns upside down. Nobody really was excited about going into Winter Harbor and to civilization, but then Marty, who loves kayakers, said, why don't you have some free salmon? So Jean grabbed it, of course.
I said yes.
Yes. And then my sous chef, also called Sue, had the experience of rubbing Marty's rub into the salmon, and it was quite wonderful. So it was pretty good. So, for the most part, I guess because people did what I wanted to do, I thought the trip worked out pretty well. Because there was also some reluctance to cross over the Sound to Mahato Creek and come back again. But by the time we got that on the agenda, it really turned into one of our most wonderful adventures. And it's really all about moments, and some of them are really magical. That's my take on it, and I appreciate having everybody, and I know not everybody really wanted to write poetry on the trip or be part of the videotaping, but for the most part, I think we're all really a lot closer because of the 18 days we had together. So
Okay, so you can see this is like the Canterbury Tales. We all have a slightly different perspective. I'm the gear maximalist. How would you have guessed? So Michael is the gear minimalist. And we had this, oh my God, experience at the packing place there at Port Hardy. He's like, I can't believe you're taking all these things. And what you may not be able to see at the back is, I think I had 12 cans. Didn't I have 12? So I had canned chicken, I had canned coconut cream and milk, and because I knew it was, get to this, great time meal. But not a problem. The Telqua high volume, man, you just roll that stuff in. And that bear barrel back there, I can get 2 of those suckers side by side, right behind my seat in the back hatch. So not a problem with, and this became known as the pantry. I think that was your moniker. Very appropriate. Or the freighter, or whatever. I'm happy. It took everything I needed and more. This is a close-up of it. So, you really don't have to want for things when you're on a trip if you just have the right boat or the right friends or something. Just get it all in there. Now, I am not a cook, as Katrina will tell you. It's not something I've developed in my life, but we went to Thailand with Jenny and Ross and some others, and I took some cooking courses. I got kind of enthused about it, and much to my own surprise, I decided I'd cook this on the trip. Well, I'll tell you, This soup is to die for. And if you are way out there, of course, anything tastes good. This knocks your socks off. It's just that. It's amazing. So tom kha gai, chicken galangal coconut soup. And after I cooked that meal, I was down about 10 cans. It was great. So that was somewhere up the north coast there. Now to cook this meal, and this is where we talk a bit about sous chef. So we picked up some of the lessons that I've learned kayaking with the catfish guys and paddling fanatic over the years, which is people take for group meals, you know, somebody's a chef, somebody's the sous chef, which for the catfish guys, you're almost a slave. Like it can be rugged, but here it was more of a collegial relationship. But I worked Jean pretty hard because I know nothing about cooking, so, but I can open cans, I can fold it. I'm good there, you know, and she actually knows how to cook. So we were a pretty good team, I think. This was putting things together. I guess this is experiment bite, and where I had my meal. So that's me and my sous chef, and this is more. Now this is an interesting picture because I was moving fast, but I don't know. I don't know if you can see here, but this is another secret from Henry Grayman, who's not here. He lives in Vancouver, but he has this signature dessert, right, guys? Yeah. The pineapple in chocolate sauce. You bring dipping chocolate, you cook it up. Bring a pineapple, like a full-on pineapple. Henry will bring a couple of them. It'll last forever. Chop them up, dip in the chocolate. Oh. You know, you really don't need a meal, but if you've had a meal, it tastes fantastic. So that was, and the sous chef was pretty tired. Actually, this is a picture from earlier, but I just thought it was So, part of the fun on trips like this is eating, let's face it. I mean, you're out there working hard, you can just about eat anything. So, as we've done on other groups I've traveled with, you have some appetizers, you have a full-on meal, you have dessert, and you actually still feel a bit hungry. I mean, it's amazing. And you're going to burn it off the next day, so it's just terrific. So we enjoyed the meals, and that was kind of, I enjoyed eating, like anybody else.
You took 2 bear barrels?
Yeah, two bear barrels. No problem in the top. That's not this. That was one of the tables that they kindly left on Kings Beach for us to set up our appetizers. But anyway, it was certainly one of the highlights of the trip was eating together. I think it does bring people together, and we all have a little bit different styles, so it's nice to sort of see the differences and enjoy that about each other. And I think that's me turning it over to John. So John might need light.
I need a bit of light. So I'll jump right in because we don't have a lot of time. I'm at the other end of the food spectrum. You know, you've seen this exotic food, and I'm at the simple calorie delivery system. So what I wanted to do was use my time to kind of set out the food that I took on the trip. I cooked separately from the others, and the reason is I have a very, very bad reaction to sulfites. And so I have to be certain, absolutely certain, that there's no sulfites in the food. So I always need to prepare and bring my own food. So what I wanted to do is just sort of explain how you can organize your food on a 16-day trip with just 2 thermoses and a stove. It's kind of like a TARDIS. On Doctor Who, you can get 16 days of food in 2 thermoses. So what I had for my system is that like my breakfast routine would really start the night before. And so what I would do the night before, I'd take each thermos, and I use these 3-cup thermoses. And the night before, I'd load each thermos, not with the water, but with a bag of dehydrated food that I had dehydrated, and I'll talk a bit about that later. So I'd load each thermos with that. I also have a little coffee filter here. So I'd load the coffee into that the night before and have that ready. And I use this stove. This is this MSR quick boil 1 liter one. I'd load that, I'd put the water in that, so that would be on hand. Wouldn't have to bother doing that in the morning. And so then, in the morning, like in the mornings when we're pressed for time, all I would have to do would be to light the stove, you know, put the pot on the stove, and it starts to boil, like it's gonna boil in under 2 minutes. And while that's boiling, I would just get the tops off the thermoses, put my little coffee filter on top of the little cup here, ready to receive the precious water that was coming. And when this had boiled, then I would dribble the water through the coffee filter, making, you know, like about half a cup of really brutal coffee. All I can say, this is a caffeine delivery system. And then I divide the rest of the water between the two thermoses. So now I'm done really, because I've got a bit of coffee. My breakfast is ready. I just put that aside. It's going to be ready to eat in 12 minutes. And the other thermos, this is a hot lunch. So I store this in the cockpit of my kayak. And if you look in your cockpits of your kayaks, you can usually find a place in the cockpit by adding a bit of shock cord or something. You can secure a thermos like this into the cockpit. So that's kind of the breakfast routine. Now I mentioned these bags, the dehydrated food. So what I do, like, make a big pot of something, chili or something, with really, really good sauce. Because after 16 days, everything tastes the same, unless there's really good sauces behind it. So you make a big pot, and then you decide how big a serving do you need. So if it's 2.5 cups, like you measure the volume of the pot, the cooked stuff. Let's say it's 15 cups. So 2.5 cups of serving would make 6 servings. You dehydrate the pot, divide it up. Now, it's very handy to use these kind of digital scales, you know, for weighing things. I mean, if you bake, it's just great to have a digital scale anyways. So you weigh the dehydrated stuff, divide it into 6 portions, put the portions into these bags. Like I use these bags from industrial plastics. And then I store them in the freezer. I don't really know if I need to do that or not, but that's what I do. And so that's basically, and then I used 4 kinds of meals. And then I just rotated the meals. Now here's the trick on the food. I just want to check my list here to see if I've forgotten anything to this point. Oh yeah, now I need to go into calories. The thing about dehydrated food is it's pure protein and carbohydrate, and you only get 4 calories per gram. So even if you have 3 big meals of dehydrated food, you're only going to be getting 1,600 calories. So you need a lot more calories. So what I did on this trip and other trips is I carry big bags which I put into these small containers of mixed seeds. So this would be a mixture of sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, chia seeds, and hemp hearts and things. And so each time you have a dehydrated meal, you add a couple of tablespoons of these mixed seeds. That boosts the calories. And then during the day, each day I make up some of these bags of nuts. So this is a 100-gram package of nuts. So the idea is that you eat those through the day. I usually have them gone by 10 o'clock. The nuts are gone, then what? So then you eat the nuts. I'd also carry these jars, a couple of jars, 2 or 3 jars of peanut butter and almond butter. So when you get to your destination, you can just mainline the peanut butter. And the other thing is, now this is a big one. I would take these containers of olive oil. And so similarly, like when you're having a meal, you can add a tablespoon of the olive oil to the thermos, because like 120 calories per tablespoon, it really boosts the calories. But adding olive oil makes these harder to clean. So the other thing you do, you can just mainline a bit of olive oil. When you're looking for calories, I know it sounds, you get used to it. Then the other thing for calories, is making granola. And granola, I love granola, it's tasty, but it takes more space. So you have to kind of take less granola than because it takes a lot of space.
Or you could get a tail clip, right?
That was the other thing. Alan had a 27-foot kayak. Mine is only 16 feet, so I had to actually pay attention to it. Now, the other thing I wanted to share with you is I use these bear canisters to store food. So in my kayak, I could fit, Alan, bigger boat, he used the big tall ones. I could fit 2 of these side by side and one in the rear hatch, right behind the bulkhead, and then another one right in front. So, and I could put about 4.5 days worth of food, including the dehydrated food, seeds and nuts and things in a single canister. So almost the whole trip. And then what was left, I put in dry bags. I thought the bear barrels would be just kind of nuts. Because, just put them, because always before I just use dry bags with food. But I found that they're very convenient. Especially all of your food for the current day and the next day. You can organize it all in one canister. So even if you've only got room to store one of these canisters in your kayak, I encourage you to try it, borrow one, and try it for a camping trip, because they're very convenient. You can sit on them. They're a very flat platform for putting on, like you want to put things on top of them when you want to pour hot water into them. You can fit everything on top there. It's a nice flat surface. You can put 2 of them together, put a bench on there. Very convenient. So a couple of
Where do you get them, John? Where do you get them?
I got these at MEC.
Oh.
A couple of miscellaneous items. We did the beer banisters, washing up. Nice thing about thermoses, just rinse them out, and you're done. The other thing, it really simplifies the utensils. Like I didn't have any bowls, plates, forks, anything. Just the spoons, the canisters, and the stove. Now, the thing I would encourage, a couple of extras that are worth taking, is that for these thermoses, it's very easy for these bits to float away, in a rogue way. And you're really not in good shape without a top for your thermos. So pack an extra top. Take 2 thermoses, and in your extra bag, pack an extra top. The other thing that's an extra, I didn't bring the bottom part of the actual stove part of this. So pack an extra burner for the stove, because again, the system doesn't work unless there's a working stove. And even with it, although other people have other stoves, it then becomes very hard to coordinate your breakfast. They're trying to pack your stove and you want to cook your breakfast. So that was my food system. So it worked that, although I have it for a special purpose, so I don't have to eat other people's food. It works for everybody. And it's got these big 4 objectives. It gives you enough calories, good nutrition. It's simple on site. And it's tasty if you make good dehydrated food.
John, with your bear barrel system, were you like Jenny, did you keep it in your kayak or did you have to hang it up?
The bear barrels? No, that's the whole idea of these things. You don't have to hang these up. I just kept them. Ideally, you're supposed to take them 50 yards down the beach and put them down there. But they're handy to sit on and look some other purpose. So I just kept one around the tent.
I don't know.
I'm not going there. It was too hard to figure that one out.
You're not.
So that was my system. So there's other things, a lot of other things I could share with you about the trip. I mean, the scarf was the birthday present. I thought I should wear it tonight. Everybody's got scarves on. And it was just so nice that the group recognized those kind of things. And there's one thing the group did that was really special for me, because that day that we had paddling from the top, Cape Sudal, down to Experiment Bight, it was really a magical day. It was sunny, swells, waves, everything was, it was just a fabulous day. And when we got into camp that night, it was my day to do the en-route 140 characters. And there was so many things that we could have put down there, like about the whales and this and anything. But I thought it was just such a great day that you just couldn't put a list down. Like, you just couldn't capture it. So I had suggested we use some words from my daughter. She'd written a prayer about it. It was really simple. You know, lift up your eyes, appreciate all you see, go in prayer, rejoice. And so I suggested that's what we should send in the inReach. And there aren't many other groups that would simply say, good idea. Let's they just got on board, you know. So that was one reason why the group kind of really worked together. Like, even if you were far out, right, they would bring that in as part of the group and make it work. So it was really a special experience. Thank you.
John doesn't know that we put these slides in here, because he's one of the two guys who don't have slides. But this is a great picture of John at Cairns Beach, I think, where there were a couple of bugs. Another thing he got into, but he didn't talk about, was he had never journaled before, which is amazing for him. He's a philosopher, let's face it. And he got into journaling in a big way. And then he could hardly stop it. He was thrilled with it, so we got that nice picture of him. And then this is John with his birthday card. We thought those would be good shots for each other.
Thank you.
And I think, Jean, you're next. Want me to do that, or you?
Yeah,
You just tell me, huh?
one thing I can comment on John's food system is that it is very welcomingly being adopted by a lot of people in the paddling community. I've started using a thermos for my lunches and as well as breakfast. And when you can have your breakfast hot and ready in less than 5 minutes, it's great. You're sitting there with your coffee in one hand, your tea for the day, your hot meal, and everybody's still scrambling over the stove. It's wonderful. It really works. Coming a little bit later in the presentation, I hope I'm not redundant. There have been so many points that we all just reveled in. And so I probably will repeat a few, but because there were the pragmatists in our group, I've tried to be very disciplined, so you'll forgive me for not speaking from the cuff. I just wrote something the other night and I'm going to read it just to stay on task time-wise. When it comes to kayak fishing, which I've been asked to talk about, I am a rank amateur. When it comes to most things, including kayaking, I consider myself an amateur. But when I was sitting alone in my boat with the sea lions and sea otters curiously checking me out as I dropped my line off the rocks at the top of Vancouver Island, I felt an exhilaration and a oneness with the profound beauty of the surroundings that keeps me reaching for these types of experiences. Cape Scott has always seemed very remote to me. I had never hiked there. My son did. I remember feeling quite envious at the time. I've been kayaking a little over 2 years, and I encourage anyone who wonders about the wild places along our coast to take instruction in kayaking, participate in the clinics that your club so generously offers to learn about camping skills and cooking, and experience the thrill of these wonderful wild places in our beautiful home. And the joy that sharing this feeling with friends, as well as retracing the steps of the early pioneers, all of which were parts of our trip that are very memorable. It makes sense when traveling on the ocean to get food from and around it. We feasted on freshly caught rockfish and mussels collected on hikes around the stacks at the Cape. There is much I don't know, but not long before there's much I don't know about fishing, but not long before our trip, I was gifted something called a weighted Hoochie. I've seen lots of Hoochies before, but at the back I see one that has a 2 or 4 ounce weight in the nose. And it was gifted to me by Glenn Lewis, and it was the best lure I've ever used in my life. I've used, buzz bombs for rockfish before, but this seemed to have a lot of success. And they're not easy to find, and someone just said to me the other day at a fishing store down in my area that, anything that's good is hard to find. So I used that primarily to catch our meal this day. But it doesn't really matter what you use. Rockfish are really incredibly easy to catch, and they're excellent, excellent eating. It's important to avoid the kelp beds, though, mindful of the drift from current and wind, which was the case that day, not only to retain your gear, but to avoid being blown out into a channel, a rough channel. I have generally with me a fish bonker on deck, and that's just a piece of driftwood I find on the beach with a bulbous end and maybe about 30 centimeters long. My fish net, which is at the back, I really enjoy having an IKEA bag between my legs inside the cockpit. So once you do the deed, you can slip the fish into the bag and avoid a mess inside your boat. But if you, I'm not a drinker, but if you do like to carry along a flask with you, one of the easier ways and the less messy ways to kill a fish is just to pour a little alcohol in the gills, and they shudder and die within seconds. It's amazing.
It's a waste of good alcohol. Just saying.
We didn't hear about that.
I used a little collapsible fishing pole. They're not the sturdiest, but they are very compact for kayak fishing. They'll tuck beside your seat, between your seat and the wall of the kayak, or you can easily have it on deck when you have a reel attached. There's an example at the back. But I also enjoy using a hand line, and I'll probably continue in that way. My friend Rial here, she uses what's called a Cuban yo-yo, if you can find them. They're on eBay, or you can get them in Mexico, very cheap. It's just a reel, a round reel, and you wind the line around the outside, and it has lips around both sides so that it retains the line. But they're very compact and efficient for kayaking. And you know, I have friends who have hauled 25-pound spring salmons out of the water on a rod and just wrestled them into their boats. And I look forward to the day when I might be, maybe I look forward to the day I might be able to do that. I don't know, I think that'd be pretty scary. But it can be done. When you're fishing rockfish, though, it's really important to have a long pair of sturdy gloves, because those spiny fins, they pack a wallop, and it'll sting and bother you for a number of hours. So my biggest caution, though, when it comes to fishing is to not get greedy. I had caught enough for supper in about an hour, and while my trip mates were doing some hiking, and I was possessed with the urge to drop the line one more time. And of course, that's the point at which the lure caught on kelp. And in trying to free it, I broke the tip of my pole because I didn't respond quickly enough. So, you know, there's always that little bit of greediness when it comes to fish, because it's just so much fun to catch fish. And of course, there's nothing better than freshly caught fish that's cooked up amongst friends within hours of being caught. It's just mouth-watering. So, the other thing I've been asked to touch upon, which has already been spoken of quite a bit, was the surprises that we had in Quatsino Sound. I love the outside. I love the swells. I love the exhilaration of being in this huge body of energy in the ocean, and feeling it move me from outside as well as within. So that's the biggest thrill for me, and I fought off feelings that the trip was, for all intents and purposes, over once we entered Quatsino Sound, leaving behind those glorious swells. As it turned out, Quatsino was filled with rich and varied pleasures of its own. The panoramic view at Kane's Beach is unsurpassed. I'm a member of the BC Marine Trails, and I was quite interested and curious to see the campsites at Hunt Islets and Mahato Creek and Drake Island, all of which we visited, which had recently been upgraded with large level tent sites, green thrones, and absolutely, you know, beautiful trail maintenance. It was very impressive. Winter Harbor was another remote mystery to me. I'd never been there. I was curious. It gave us a pretty good view into the world of sport fishing and all that goes with it. And we've already talked about the wonderful generosity of the lady from Smithers who gave us that beautiful slab of fish. I recently, when we attended Eve and Patty's presentation on their trip down to Tofino, and they did their main replenishing stop after 10 days on the water in Winter Harbor. They talked to the lady that had the campsite there, one of the RV sites there, and they stored the food for them. So when you make those connections, you know, you can time your trip so that it leaves you with ample supplies, although I think we managed to pack most of everything, except when we went to the store there, of course, we had to get some chips and goodies and t-shirts and whatnot. and you meet the locals, you know, the gentleman that had been there at the store for what, 30 years or something
Too
like
long.
that. It was interesting. Upon leaving Kane's Beach, the caves along the north shore of Quatsino Sound were some of the best I've ever experienced. A triple cave saw fully half of our group able to go in at the same time. We were just, and it was a beautiful day. We made the crossing in quite a stiff breeze and got over to this protected shore because it was out of the northwest, and actually all of the sport fishermen had been holed up for a few days because it was blowing 30, 40 knots on the outside. Even they weren't going out. So we really enjoyed being able to explore these shorelines. And when we went a little further along, the hillsides come down, and the wind would just be speeding up as it tumbled down the hillside and hit the water. And it was like we were going through this headwind and keep thinking, we're almost there, and then it would come and hit us again. It was extraordinary. I mean, paddling experiences like that it was just so much fun because of the variability and the challenges that it presented. I love wilderness camping. You know, I loved that feeling of I'm the first person and the only person that's ever been here. But we were all pleasantly surprised by the forestry campsite at Spencer Cove. We had privacy, we had a table, a fire ring, split wood. It was here I learned how to change the wrist gasket in my dry suit. Compliments of Alan, who is just an incredibly patient and generous person. I delighted in learning firsthand how to do that. I think we used a Bodum as the hold, you know, to hold the wrist gasket open.
Tell us the second choice.
No. With the guys, I use my pee bottle.
Yeah.
I changed for
We
Gene. I
won't go
changed
there.
it.
I was going to use my jet foil, and it was about the same size. The bear on the beach at the head of the cove that we saw a film clip of earlier, lazy turning over rocks for a quick meal, it rivaled any sighting that we had up in San Joe on the Parks Beach, where of course they're wandering around because there's food caches and lots of hikers and campers. A day trip to Mahato Creek, which became a real true highlight for all of us, was preceded by a paddle through the Cucino Islands. And I was just absolutely captivated by the stillness and the peace and the early morning light. And red-crested merganser and her brood of chicks was nearby, and I didn't get a good picture of them. It was all foggy, but they were rushing away from me. And the creek at Mahato just amazed us all because there was such pristine fresh water in such ample supply. Luxurious bathing pools in the sunlight, and a challenging swim upstream for water. Most of the creeks in the Quatsino area were dry, and that made Mahato that much more special. This is where the main push, you could swim all the way up to this point and gather fresh water, and the previous, and then floating back. I must admit, you know, I wasn't as, I went in to swim, and people were just bathing and swimming at first, and then I just was possessed by this feeling. I just had to swim up, and I've been a swimmer since I was a kid, so I was just in my shorts and a shirt, and I swam up the river. I wasn't thinking about water, and I felt very guilty afterwards when everybody else did the hard work of actually gathering the fresh water. But there was something so incredibly magical about being in that flow and going up right up to the
waterfall and just being there. And then I paddled back later. That previous picture is looking downstream when the tide had come up considerably here, and that's Mahato Creek on the way out in my boat. All of this, when we first arrived, was dry, and we walked up through the flats to the swimming hole. That was a beautiful spot, and we visited we also visited the Mahato Creek Green Trail site. And again, it was quite buggy because all of the campsites are in the trees. So we always tried to find open spaces, or a little more open spaces, and Drake Island provided that, as well as sites in the trees. We continued on, from Spencer Cove to Drake. Enjoyed a couple more days exploring the area, beginning in the town of Quatsino itself. Vicky opened the museum for us after hours, where we bought books, homemade jams, and mini chocolate bars, and viewed all of the artifacts from the previous year's residents. Sewing and other crafts by locals were available and were also to support the museum. I could spend a lot of time talking about the original settlers of Cucino, because I read a book written by one of the son of one of the original, actually the leader of the colony. And it really gave me such a different perspective on the history of the coast, because these people were lured originally by promises of plenty, incredible water and timber and fish, and they first heard about this area at the Chicago exhibition in 1895. And that had a special link for me because I'm from Chicago originally, and the Museum of Science and Industry was one of the main pavilions. So all of these things took place, in years prior to me even walking the planet. And then to end up in Quatsino, where these people moved from North Dakota to Quatsino. And they struggled to make a go of it. They were promised a school, a post office, and transportation links. Unfortunately, they became a political pawn between the conservative and liberal parties. And most of, if not all, of the main mineral rights, water rights, the right to timber and to fishing were sold to the wealthy industrialists of the day, the same people that built the railway. And I believe that the colonists here in Quatsino, as well as at Cape Scott, which was a Danish colony, they were betrayed. They never received the transportation links that they needed to create viable communities. And in our visit, we got to see the remnants of that past at both Cape Scott and here in Quatsino. It was really fascinating. It's a story that really, I guess it's not that much different from what we experience nowadays. This beautiful inlet, though, it remains the home of descendants of these original settlers who stayed in spite of the broken promises and wouldn't move now. Even now, they just love it there. And I found it absolutely fascinating to explore the human side of this history and these places. We felt it on Drake Island as well, when, as Jenny mentioned, there was a homestead on the backside, on the south side of Drake, where we spent an afternoon looking through all the artifacts that remained. It was really, really interesting. Unfortunately, we were too early to explore the Marble River Canyon, as was previously mentioned. The locals praised the beauty of this area, and we hope to go back. We meandered into Cole Harbor, and even the boat launch. When we went through the Narrows, Jenny talked about what incredible marine life we viewed, and the Untitled life wasn't something that I really focused on. I'm sort of a big picture person, not the detail person. So when we traversed this passage of slack water, that really changed my whole perspective. We marveled at the variety and the color of the life, the dog stars, sea cucumbers, leatherbacks, chitons, whelks, and much more. I gained a true appreciation for the wealth and variety of life forms that share the waters with me. A native burial cave halfway through the Narrows, I'm convinced, housed the spirits of ancient civilizations. Unfortunately, we're too early for marble, but, and then we carried on into Cole Harbor, past those gorgeous cliffs that Jenny showed us earlier. And, I mean, just the fact, now this young lady that's driving the forklift also flew the plane. I mean, she was amazing. But that, again, gives you a sense, here we are kayakers, we're sharing this boat launch with the seaplane getting lifted out of the water on a forklift. It's a going concern, you know, and a very rich, historically rich region, and I was fascinated. It's such a wonderful feeling to feel an intimacy with it now that I previously never had. But the most important thing is people that I shared this trip with. Were it not for them, I would not have been changed as I was by these experiences. While I felt like an outsider at the start, the generosity and acceptance among us saw us share skills that have broadened my kayaking repertoire and my perspective. I have a much deeper appreciation for all facets of kayak tripping, the sharing and cooperation among friends, that keeps everyone safer, happier, better fed, and uninjured with the rigors of hauling loaded boats and negotiating weather, wind, and terrain. I am very fortunate to have been a part of the Capers and will always cherish the memories and these hardy individuals I came to appreciate in a very deeply personal way as friends. Thank you.
Now, some would say we've saved the best for last. Who would that be who would say that? But Michael's one of those people who, he doesn't need any slides. We put a couple up there. So this is Michael kicking back, I think, at Cape Scott, and you think he's just taking in beauty and nature and all that, but actually he's trying to remember what he did with his spoon. This was one of the interesting sort of subplots of the trip, that Michael's spoon disappeared, and a couple days later he noticed that my spoon looked a lot like his spoon. You know, he's a pretty easygoing guy, but there was that implication that maybe I got his spoon, you know. So we never gave him a spoon, and he carved his own. And I think he felt pretty rugged about that. But there was this guys we met in San Joseph Bay who were using big mussel shells for spoons. Well, now that's West Coast. Michael, we brought you a spoon here. I think this is from Debbie's storehouse, so you know, never go without a spoon, buddy. So that's one slide you're just going to have to soak up. And this is the other one. This is Michael. And it's great to have his skills along. Great to have his leadership.
It's color coordination.
Yeah, his color coordination. So you wouldn't know it, you know, but he is a green and yellow guy. I'm telling you, pretty much everything he has is green or yellow. So there you go. It was great to have Michael on the trip, and now you get to have the fun.
I get to sum up. So, actually, I got to be the pirate because I forgot my scarf, so Debbie gave me this one. And it actually just occurred to me, the scarf that you gave me was a green scarf. It never occurred to me. Because that was all by accident, this color coordination thing. But Alan insisted there was more to it than that. But the spoon thing, yeah, it was kind of funny because I did notice. And I was the minimalist, so I only had like one. It's not true. I had lots of redundancies of stuff you needed redundancies for, things that I didn't have. So, thermos system, one thermos is plenty. You don't need two, I'm telling you. Some Cliff Bars, bit of oatmeal, you're good to go. Twizzlers, I was going to say. So, as we got to, so just before I sum up, I will tell you a couple of personal memories. As we got to Port Hardy, just before we left, so those of us who were responsible for meals, so I had done some good hearty chili and some good hearty pasta, and that was it. And I get there and I hear people talk about, well, yeah, I brought this for appetizers, and then this is dessert. And I thought, I got a one-pot meal. You're going to get your calories. It's going to taste good, but that's it. And so then Debbie says, we're in this grocery store. I sort of look at her. I say, so would a bag of Twizzlers count as dessert? She goes, yeah, so everybody from mine has got 2 Twizzlers. And Alan is my sous chef. It's the easiest job in the world because all he had to do is boil some water.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
And that was was it. And then I followed with Debbie, who cooked absolutely everything. So life doesn't always work out fair. Alan did mention his Thai soup, which was absolutely phenomenal. But one of the quirks that he in the pantry had was one of the ingredients he required for this soup was a small amount of this special hot pepper from, I'm not sure where it was from. So Alan gets it out, and he's got like a bag of like this big of these things that would have been enough to heat the ocean. And he needed about that much. So every once in a while, to give something a little bit of bam, he'd take one of these things and just do about like that, and I'd go, I got lots. I think it was in San Joseph Bay. I missed a bear. I heard people getting all excited about this bear. I was in my tent changing. I had no clothes on. They're going, there's the bear, there's the bear. And I got no clothes on. I can't run out and look at the bear. So I'm trying to get some clothes on. Of course, by the time I got my clothes on, that was the end of the bear.
Be the bear, like be the bear.
Yeah, be the bear. The other little dirty trick that Alan had, because he had everything in that pantry, is he had this jar, and I think he's got some down there, of these, I think they were chocolate-covered coffee beans.
Oh, yeah.
And he starts passing these things around. I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. Alan says, oh, these are good, you should try some. I said, really? He said, yeah, just have a few. So I had a few, and I didn't have any more of those. So, for me though, I would say that what I really look at what a highlight was, really didn't have anything to do with either the paddling or the camping. And I'm one of these people that can never decide, do I like the paddling more or do I like the camping more? And that's really, for me, is a nice dilemma to have. But for me, really a highlight was a lot of personal conversations I had with people. And you can have personal conversations anywhere, but I find when you're away and kind of the noise of life fades away, those conversations just come up. And conversations about life, about challenges, about family, about different perspectives, and sometimes those would be on the water, sometimes those would be on a hike, sometimes they'd be in camp, but to me that was one of the things that really stood out. And now to summarize, Alan had this great phrase, which for me, you've heard all kinds of perspective, and just even the way Alan did his Canterbury Tales is, he had just gotten back quite recently from Thailand, and he'd regale us with all kinds of tales. And one of the tales that he regaled us with is, he said, he'd be looking for something. They'd be out looking for something specific, and they'd ask people, and he said he'd always get the same response. He'd say, do you have this? And he'd go, yes, and he'd say, look at it, and it didn't quite, and they'd go, yeah, same, but different. And he said everywhere they go, you keep hearing, yeah, same, but different. And that, to me, really summarizes this trip, and I suspect summarizes a lot of group trips. Same, but different. And that is that there are many trips within a trip. And so there's the common experience, but for most of us, I mean, depending on your skill level, your fitness level, your interest, it's going to be quite a different experience that you have. And I mean, just to really, to go with that and enjoy it and embrace that you've got a common experience, but within that, you're still going to have your own personal experience. We talked about why we wanted to do this presentation, and we had two goals in mind. And one obviously was give us an opportunity to relive some pretty magical moments in our own lives. But we talked about we have lots of experiences, and people share trips, and it's great. And as somebody was on that trip, just remembering all kinds of stuff that I'd forgotten about. I hadn't forgotten about the spoon, Alan, but a lot of them was totally wonderful. But the other reason that we thought this was really worth doing was to encourage other people. I mean, to set out, this was a 16-day trip. There certainly were some possible challenging areas, but really showing that it was doable. As I like to remind everybody, you had Kid Caper, who was a lot younger than the rest of the group, but I mean, together, it wasn't like we were a bunch of 20-something-year-olds heading off. And so I would leave people with a couple of thoughts, and one about if you have any interest to really consider going and pursuing a longer trip, because well, we all got an awful lot out of it. And for us, I think a lot of that success depended on mitigating risks. And I think that there's a number of ways, if you're thinking about doing something more challenging, that you can mitigate risk. The first, which I couldn't stress enough, is you really want to follow the weather closely, because if you're on the ocean, especially the winds, but tides and currents, I mean, these are things that can get you into a lot of trouble. And the trip we went on certainly could have ranged anywhere from life-threatening, and I've certainly talked to people going around Cape Scott, and could be nasty. When we were in Winter Harbor, people were looking at us because there were huge boats coming in that were beaten up. But we mitigated that by understanding what the weather was, and even probably more importantly, giving ourselves enough cushion so that we didn't need to paddle in anything that people felt uncomfortable in. So we waited a few days at Cape Scott in order to get around. We had a very long paddle day because we were out running a weather front. But in doing that, I mean, we really had, for the most part, pretty placid weather. So if you give yourself that margin, you know, play within your own limits, these things are extremely doable. And then the other thing, I guess, that really is going to add to that people, the rest of the capers talked about, was the group planning ahead and on the water, around expectations, around food, around shared gear, and around contingencies and responsibilities. And if you do that, it really is doable. I really, again, would encourage people, if you're thinking about it, to go for it, because, hey, we're not getting any younger. And that, capers, is our trip.
All right. This is thanks to Fred Picholsky, because the Paddling Fanatic, we thought we'd turn it up a notch with a little thank you, so we do have a little thank you screen here too. But that is the show. We want to take questions, and we've left time for it. You can read this while we're...
Is that on purpose?
Oh, yeah. We thought it was kind of her, but actually it was prevention. These guys, Harvey and Todd, were celebrating their 25th anniversary while we were here.
They sell you some chocolate bars?
Yeah.
Did they? I thought they didn't have the store open.
Oh, no, they didn't have this chocolate bars. They had some other stuff. Nice to have local connections. That is that. So thank you. We tried to do it quickly so you'd have time for questions, right, Jim?
Questions? Can I just add to the chocolate-coated coffee beans? I guess you call it the beans of life.
The beans of life, we call them, yeah.
And Alan fed a couple to Michael. And
That's all it took.
I don't think you drink tea, do you? Sometimes a cup of tea, probably decaffeinated. Anyway, I mean, Alan had sort of warned us pretty early into, not when we did our planning, but you know, if he's really having a good time, he goes a bit goofy. But Michael's sort of, quite, sedate, with a good sense of humor. Anyway, these two were giggling. And I'm like, what's wrong with Michael? Because, Alan does it. And And then somebody said, well, Michael's had a couple of the beans of life.
He needs a regular diet, huh?
Caffeine is not a stimulant. Anyway, we're all here. Any questions? I don't know if I mentioned it. We've got a little show and tell back there with items that, like the hooks with the screws that you can screw into logs to then tie your tarp lines. That was from Gary Allen years ago when I did my level 2. You got me off that little nail brush, the fine nail. It's great for sweeping up your tent, and it's like this big. So it's good for that. Wiping wet off your tarps and your fly, and doing your nails. So it has 3 uses. So there's a number of things happening. But you know, we didn't see anything written up anywhere about bugs. Oh boy. Whew.
Quatsino.
Yeah, I now have a bug hat.
Bug hat's back there. Hang on.
So did you take anything amongst all of you that you found you didn't use or didn't need?
Oh, yeah.
Lots?
Some of us could say no.
I can think of one thing that somebody wished they had room for.
Yes.
I was the only one drinking alcohol.
Oh.
And Michael could not fit cans of beer in. There was just no room. So when Michael, you supplied us with 2 cans of beer, and I was very mean. I took one. And we just IV'd them. It was like, but it was funny, because out of 6 people, I had my little Crown Royal, my rye whiskey every night. I felt kind of lonely drinking all night. But Linda assures me she'll keep
Not lonely enough to share.
So, any questions for?
When exactly did you go? What was when were you out there?
June.
July.
July.
6th to 22nd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you use your first aid kits at all?
A little bit. Band-aids. I did.
Ouch kits, not
Ouch kits.
not the.
No open heart surgery. Damn! Still haven't done that.
I'm a recently retired physical therapist, and I developed, from doing the rudder, pulling my rudder up and down. My old rotator cuff played up badly, and so I had dip, and I didn't take big first aid kit, and there was no sports tape, I think. So we used duct tape. That was a mistake. Did you? Yeah. Anyway, because I knew how it needed to be taped, to have it settle down. But so don't do that.
I took sport tape all the way to Alaska.
I know, and you brought it back to me.
You gonna tell them about the other equipment you took? Special equipment?
Oh, yeah, for the long run down the coast.
Oh God, okay. Well, do you remember that we had a 22 nautical mile paddle from San Joseph Bay into, around the Quatsino Sound?
Wearing dry suits.
Wearing dry suits, and we might not have been able to stop. And there was 3 girls. That was the first time I ever seen a boy use a bottle in a kayak.
Yeah.
In fact, what happened was Michael was sort of, he was a picture taker too, and he sort of wandered off that way. I thought, what are we smoking at? Anyway, so that was it for, I didn't see, but then I suddenly realized there was a lot of focus, but not on the scenery. But anyway, so I was thinking, if you can't stop, like say we couldn't have stopped at Raft Cove, because Eve and Patty had probably their worst close call with, crashing into each other with decisions they made with going into the river. And so I was thinking, my girlfriend lives with her Alzheimer's mother, and Betty wears Depends. So I had one each for 3 girls, a little Ziploc bag. And I thought, I wonder if they come in small, medium, and large, because Betty's pretty big, but I guess they're one size fits all. So I think Deb and I did wear them, just in case, because you can do your stuff and get your suit all mucked up. But we didn't need to.
You weren't offered?
Because we had to stop along the way. But it was just, my middle name is What If. And people can laugh about that, but it was actually a good thing to. But that's ready for only if you can't stop for a long time. And I did sort of warn people that, in my opinion, coffee is a diuretic. And most of my friends have to pee sooner than people that drink tea. And so that was that story. There's something I thought of, but I can't. Oh, John, where's John? Where's John? Where's John gone?
Mentally
John, you didn't talk about, you know, how it was for you to do that long distance. We did 2 18-mile days, and you just said, you know, wow. Do you want to just?
Oh, yeah, we talked a bit about this before. That what we found, or what I found, was that planning a trip so that you do some long days, 16, 18 nautical miles, it's very satisfying to be on the water that long. You know, to leave early and just paddle a long time. Maybe it's, the benefit is way out of proportion. It's much more satisfying than paddling for 12 or 13 nautical miles. To get that long day in, so that, I mean, you're gonna break camp, there's so much work. You might as well make it worth your while. But quite apart from that reducing the number of camping times, just being on the water, paddling longer, turned out to be a good strategy.
And we usually had 2 bio snack breaks, lunch, somewhere there.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were wearing your dry suits when you were just in town because you didn't have another change of clothes? Do you have to always wear them?
At Winter Harbor and at Quatsino. Just we got out of our boats and we were only there for half an hour.
So you had other.
We didn't have a dinner engagement. Yeah, so we just, and the temperature was such that, you know, staying in the dry suits. That's another thing. Like even Patty didn't wear a dry suit the whole trip. Oh, I lived in mine, you know, on the water. I'm what if, you know. Did everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all did. So,
You don't find one hot?
nope. You know what? You get hot, you fall
Is
in.
it all one? Is it like pants
Yeah.
and top?
No, it's a dry suit. It's all in one. With the unisex, which is boys only. Zip is here, and I had a back flap. Okay, but yeah, you're gasketed, and yeah, you get hot. You just lean on somebody's bow and get wet.
Yeah, the temperatures were very mild, and there were, I think 1 or 2 times I went out with just a quick dry shirt and shorts. You could do it, it's just, but those were for day paddles. When we were on the outside, we thought it was the more sensible thing to do. Plus, they take up a fair bit of room, you know, you have to pack them. Ian had a question at the back?
Yeah, it looked like you're prepared for surf climbing. I'm just wondering how big was the biggest surf climb you had to do?
Raft Cove?
Yeah. Raft Cove, coming in, tucking in the north side. We've actually have a little story around that if we've got time. What time do we have to be out of here?
It's 9. It's almost 9 now.
Almost 9, okay, we better cut it short. Yeah, so, you know, it's just what it could have been. So we had little surf landing. 3 people went into Raft Cove. 3 of us had noticed that across from Raft Cove, there was a beach that was not getting any white water at all. So 3 of us went over there and had a flat water landing. And also, we didn't have to go half a mile in and half a mile out. We were still on the way south. So
It was fun, though.
yeah, it was fun.
How big were the waves on the bridge? Oh, they were, what, Michael? Meter and a half?
Yeah, Alan didn't fall over, but he got soaking wet coming out. You know, like relaunching. So.
Good face wash.
But it could have been. So you wanted to have the skills for that. And in case there was something where you had to land to get off the water for something, you wanted to have those skills. Anyway, I think we're out of time.
Did you see any sea otters?
Yes, but in little just singles and a couple of doubles, and they were pretty shy. Like at New Chapters, they're just right there.
Yeah.
2 years experience. We expected rafts of them in Quatsino Sound, and it wasn't.
So thanks very much. We've left some things in the back there. Happy to talk to anybody who wants to stay.
You might want to take that off there and photograph the back table if you want.